Hey there, race fans. It's Race Day Top 5 with me, Frank 5. Kansas Speedway in the middle of the Windy City, a place where football is beginning, the racing season continues to progress. And in race 2 of the playoffs, we had more playoff drivers run into problems. Some bounced back from a rough weekend, the previous race at Darlington, and another non-playoff driver kicks off this round with a win for a very popular sports icon. Let's get into all that happened yesterday at Kansas. Number 1, Bubba Wallace driving the 45 car, not the 23 is normal number, driving the 45 car, captured his second career NASCAR Cup Series win by winning yesterday's Hollywood Casino 400 at Kansas Speedway yesterday. Once again, back-to-back weeks, a non-playoff driver opens the playoffs by beating other playoff contenders, and this race, Bubba was able to hold off his car owner, Denny Hamlin, Christopher Bell, Alex Bowman, and Martin Truex Jr. to do it. Bubba Wallace, of course, 1 year ago, he captured his first career cup win, winning at Talladega. Granted, it was rain-shortened, but he put himself in position at the very end to hold those guys off. Then a wreck happened behind him, and a few moments later, the rain came, and we had a long, long delay until NASCAR called it, and Bubba was declared the winner. His first big win in the NASCAR Cup Series, and of course, it was the first one not only for him, but for 23XI Racing. Now, earlier this year, Bubba Wallace started off the season finishing second in the Daytona 500 to Austin Cindric. He did not get the win. Then after that, he had a little bit of a bump in the road. They were really not running well. They were not performing like their teammate Kurt Busch were at the time. But then we went to Kansas in the spring early this year, and Bubba Wallace in that race had a good race car. What let him down from a possible opportunity to contend for the win? His pit crew. They kept putting him in positions where they didn't nail pit stops. They lost track position, and Bubba was getting really animated on the radio. They did rebound for a 10th place run, but you wonder what could have been. While that all happened, Kurt Busch, his teammate at the time, went on to win the race, and that locked Kurt Busch into the playoffs and the 45 car for the Owners' Championship. Well, a couple of weeks ago, it was announced that Bubba Wallace, since he missed the playoffs, would jump ship to drive the 45 car the rest of the year because it was eligible for Owners' Championship. Because Kurt Busch has still not returned, and it's highly unlikely that he returns at all this season, although we don't know, Bubba was able to put himself in the 45 car to give him an opportunity to try at least run for a championship for the Owners' title. And last week, they started off at Darlington in the Owners' Championship with a relatively good run. Ran top 10, finished top 15, but they did well. Yesterday in the race, he started out a little bit in the mid-pack. Then he was running in the top 10 for a lot of the part. And in the final stage, something clicked with that 45 car. It was like the 45 car we saw in Kansas earlier this year, only it showed up at the very end of the race this time instead of being dominant the entire day, even though Kurt Busch won it. Bubba was just flat out strong with about 60 plus laps to go. He takes the lead from Alex Bowman and just drove away from the rest of the crowd behind him. He just did not look back. Then after a round of green flag pit stops in the closing stages of the race, he was pulling away, but was running into some lap traffic, and his car owner behind him, Denny Hamlin, who needs a win to advance into the next round, although points-wise he looks relatively good right now, Bubba was able to hold off a challenge from his car owner despite running into all the lap traffic, and Bubba was able to get the win. And in his post-race interview, when he was celebrating the front stretch, he put his finger up to his lips saying, shh, pretty much to silence all the people that have doubted him, all the people that are continuing to accuse him of not being a good race car driver, and all the people saying, oh, your win at Talladega last year wasn't legit. Listen, folks, he put himself in position last year to win that race before the rain came. This time around, he really proved himself. I'm not saying I doubt Bubba Wallace. He put together a great effort the entire race. I mean, the summer, Bubba Wallace has run better than he did earlier in this year. Unfortunately, they just weren't able to get a win. Remember at Michigan, he finished second to Kevin Harvick, who got him on that last restart of the race. He was so dejected in his post-race interview. But yesterday, he celebrated his second career win, the third win for 23XI Racing. And the 45 car still continues on in the Owners' Championship. And now that we have this second win for Bubba, there could be more on the way. It might be more later this year. It could be more to start off the season next year. But I continue to see that the future is continuing to look bright, not only just for Bubba Wallace, but for 23XI Racing in general, with the alliance that they have with Joe Gibbs Racing and how this next-gen car has kind of benefited them this year more so than it did a year ago. But hats off to Bubba Wallace, Booty Barker, his crew chief, and the entire 45 team for putting together a marvelous performance and getting a win this season at Kansas. Number 2, the Toyotas. Despite Bubba Wallace's win, The Toyota drivers that are playoff contenders had strong runs yesterday. Denny Hamlin finished second, really struggled at the beginning of the race. They didn't necessarily have track position on their hands. But then the later stages of the race, by the start of the final stage, he got his track position by jumping into the top 10. And I continued to see the speed of that 11 car continue to get better and better and better and better. And it looked like Bubba had run into a little heavier lap traffic at the very end. Hamlin would have gotten him. And Hamlin would not have gone easy on his driver, let me tell you. He wants to win because he wants to add more bonus points to his point total for the next round of the playoffs. Because looking at his point cushion, about 40-plus points, he's a sure lock-in with some stage points next weekend at Bristol. But he had a really good run yesterday despite the slow start. A great rebound for Hamlin, especially after a pit penalty earlier, which how many times have we seen that with Denny Hamlin? A lot. Christopher Bell ran top 5, top 10 pretty much the whole day. He had a really good race car. I'm not entirely sure if it was as good enough to win the race, but it was good enough to compete up front with the other playoff drivers that he was around. He came out of it with a third-place result. At times, it looked like he was going to run down Bubba until Denny made that late charge, but in general, it was a good day for both of those guys. Then their other teammate, Martin Sherex Jr., of course, missed the playoffs, still has yet to win a race this season. He had a really good run yesterday after coming oh so close last weekend at Darlington before the engine blew up. He had a great car today. He ran strong. I think he won stage 1, if I'm not mistaken. Then in the beginning part of stage 2, actually bounced off the wall of the turn 2, but it wasn't severe enough to knock him out of the race. He was able to come to pit road, get some tires, and maybe flare out the fenders a little bit, and he rebounded for a nice 5th place finish. So the speed was definitely there for the Toyotas. Really, ever since the playoffs, it seems like the Toyotas have got the bigger, faster tracks, like your mile and a half. Darlington is obviously a 1.3 mile track, but still relatively fast, like a mile and a half. They've got these mile and a halves figured out right now. Of course, they were really good at Kansas earlier this year. They've been good at all the mile and a halves that we've gone to. They could keep this up for a race in a couple weeks at Texas Motor Speedway and Homestead Miami Speedway. There's no stopping any of these Toyotas. They just had the speed the entire race yesterday, the entire weekend. There was one of them that did not have a good run, and we'll get into him later when I talk about some of the guys that really struggled yesterday. But it was a good day in general for Toyota with the strong runs by Denny Hamlin and Christopher Bell and Martin Truex Jr. in general. Number 3, Alex Bowman puts together a very impressive run by dominating the race, leading the most laps, and winning a stage. Earlier this year, Alex Bowman had 2 wins in the season. He won at had 1 win this year. He won at Las Vegas. And then after that, he went on a downfall, not really running that well, not really competing for top 5s, top 10s, or wins like his teammate Chase Elliott was, like Kyle Larson was, like Byron was starting to at times and then not really having the best results. But last week to open up the playoffs, Alex Bowman wasn't good at the beginning, but was able to pull through in the end with a solid top 10 run. And that top 10 run carried momentum this weekend into Kansas, a track where Bowman's been close to winning a couple of times. Remember 2019 when we had the 550 package? He was so good in that race. In the closing stages, it looked like he was going to win until Brad Keselowski got the best of him on that final restart and held on to win. But Alex Bowman brought his A game yesterday. Him and Greg Ives, who, by the way, will not be with this team next year as he will step down from crew chiefing duties at the end of the 2022 season. But this team put together a great performance yesterday. They had a really good car. I think for the short runs, they had everybody covered. But in the long runs, the Toyotas got the better of him, and that's why Bubba passed him with about 60-plus to go. And Bowman, unfortunately, just couldn't. He kind of lost the handling of the car at the beginning of that final stage. Then when we got in that later laps of those green flag run in the closing stage of the race, he got the handling back. He said it's much better now, but unfortunately, he was too far back to try to make a charge at the very end. But still, a great day for Alex Bowman, and he's capitalized on this great run and that stage win by building his cushion over the cutoff line going into Bristol. If he can have a good run next weekend, he's a lock to make it into the next round. So a great run by the 48 of Alex Bowman. Number 4, playoff drivers that got bitten by the Wicked Witch of the West. That's a Wizard of Oz reference, by the way. Drivers that needed to have a good run from last weekend's race. Some of them did not run so well this race this weekend. The first casualty, I can't believe this. Kevin Harvick is now in a must-win situation after having a top 10 run last week, and then ultimately the car caught on fire. And of course, he was very vocal about this weekend, and NASCAR implemented some changes to the next-gen car to prevent this from happening again. And let's hope it worked. And Kevin Harvick's voice allowed NASCAR to take initiative and respond to what he had to say, because he did make a valid point. He had a great car at the beginning of the race yesterday, but after a restart of the competition caution, when he was caught behind dirty air of Bubba Wallace, the eventual winner, and Ross Chastain running side by side, Harvick caught some dirty air and slipped, lost it, and hit the outside wall. And for the first time ever, Kevin Harvick finished dead last. He did not finish the race yesterday, and he's now 30-plus points below the cutoff going into Bristol, a track where he's been good at before, and the last time he won was before he had a year off of not winning a race at all. He last won the night race at Bristol in 2020, so it's possible he wins there, but this incident really killed him. And Tyler Redick, who had a great run last week in a great race car, and was really good at the beginning of stage 1, it looked like he was going to be the guy to beat. Well, coming off of turn 2, the car slipped and hit the outside wall, bent the right rear upper control arm out. He was out of the race. 35th place finish for Tyler Redick. Now, he's still above the cutoff, but only by a few points, by 2 points. He's good at Bristol, but can you put it together next week? That's the big question. And then Kyle Busch, by the way, just real quickly, Kyle Busch is expected to announce tomorrow at 10 a.m. on your Tuesday his plans for next year. And lately, I've been seeing rumors that it's going to be Richard Childress Racing he's going to, but I'm just speculating. We won't know until he officially announces tomorrow at the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Kyle Busch had a pretty good race car. He was in the top 10 for the most part, lost his track position with the pit penalty, but he was able to try to rebound into the top 15. Then on turn 4, he spun around and the car went through the grass, and skating through the grass might have damaged something to the floor panel of that number 18 car, because after that, the car was never the same. He finished 26th, 2 laps down. And right now, he's 2 points below the cutoff. But again, he's going to a track where he's been very good at in the past. He won there earlier this year. Granted, it was the dirt race. But Kyle Busch has been known to compete and run up front at Bristol. Can he do it this time? And what could most likely be his last ride for Joe Gibbs Racing? We're going to find out. We're going to see what Kyle Busch is truly made of. But those guys just did not execute yesterday, and now that's why they're in this position. By the way, Chase Briscoe, trying to rebound from the wreck last week earlier at Darlington, he put together a top 15 performance. Wasn't the best. He's still below by 9 points. I'm thinking he's pretty much out. Austin Dillon, he's just been quiet in these playoffs. Top 20 finishes in both of them. They finished 14th yesterday. He has a chance of points way in, but I don't really know about his chances. We'll see. He's got to put, if he can put together a clean night and other guys have problems and he can capitalize on them, then he deserves to get into the next round. But right now, I just don't see it. So it's pretty much, right now, it's the only driver that's must win, Kevin Harvick. The other guys have problems. They can still point the way in, but they could be at the edge of elimination if they have a problem next weekend. And number 5, playoff drivers who had bad runs last weekend capitalized on good runs this weekend. Some of them, like Ross Chastain, Chase Elliott, Daniel Suarez, Kyle Larson, after, even though he kind of rebounded from the engine problems last week to finish 12th, he had a much better performance this week. Ran top 10, top 15 for the most part, finished inside the top 10. Ross Chastain finished in the top 10 after having problems last weekend with his tire getting debris caught in the left rear, and he had to rebound for 20th. Daniel Suarez, who was involved in an incident, and he fell laps down and only could rebound for a top 20 finish. He had a nice top 10 result yesterday after he rebounded from a pit penalty. Chase Elliott, who finished dead last at Darlington last weekend, he was able to come away with a decent result yesterday in an 11th place finish. He didn't qualify well. At the beginning of the race, they slipped back a few spots, then he started to pick some spots back up. They made some adjustments, and the car got better towards the end of stage 1, where he was able to capitalize and get 5 stage points in stage 1. He got 6 stage points in stage 2, 11 playoff points total from those stages. Then in stage 3, the car just went away. Apparently, they put on scuffed tires and it just didn't work. And Alan Gusson thought, we're going to get another yellow. We'll put on fresh tires and we'll let you go to the front. It never happened. And apparently, Chase Elliott lost the 10th spot at the end of Suarez because he was caught up in lap traffic and he was not happy about it on the radio. However, though, an 11th place run for Chase Elliott puts him from 14 points above the cutoff after last weekend to now 28 above. A lot better going into Bristol. If he can get a few points and avoid any incidents, the regular season champion should be still good enough to make it into the next round. He's still considered the favorite, even though the first 2 races haven't gone well for him. Last week was just really bad. This week, a lot better, even though it's not a solid top 5, top 10 run. He still was able to get some stage points and make up some points and build a little bit of a cushion going into the world's fastest half mile next weekend. So those guys were able to build on some points. And also Austin Cindric, quiet in Darlington last weekend. This weekend, another quiet race, but solid one. Finished in the top 15. Did a good job. And, he's only a few points above the cutoff, but he's been known to run well at Bristol before, especially when the Xfinity Series and Truck Series. Of course, this is the first time he's doing it on the concrete surface, so we'll see what he's truly made of next weekend. So, looking ahead, just to quickly analyze, the drivers above the cutoff right now, Christopher Bell at 58 points, he's already clinched the spot. The drivers with about at least 40 to 20 points above the cutoff should feel pretty good. Denny Hamlin, William Byron, who's just been really good in these playoffs, and he had a great run yesterday. Alex Bowman, Joey Logano, Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Ross Chastain, Ryan Blaney. They should all feel pretty good going into the Bristol next weekend with the cushion that they have, that they should make it to the next round. Tyler Redick, Austin Cindric, you're going to want to have a really good run next weekend, guys. I'm going to tell you right now. If you don't put it together, you're going to be in pretty big trouble for the most part. Same goes for Suarez, above the cutoff, but got to put it together. Kyle Busch, he's got to gain some points. He's got to hope one of those guys falls out. A stage win and possibly a race win helps. Again, the only driver below the cutoff that must win, unless something chaotic happens, Kevin Harvick must win next weekend at Bristol. That's the look at the playoff grid going into the race next weekend. Before I quickly sign off, yesterday was the 21-year anniversary of 9/11. Of course, I was a little baby at the time. I didn't really know about the events until when you go to school, you learn more about the history of that day and what transpired. It was a very, very sad day for our country when those 4 planes crashed into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, of course, the other one into the open field where the passengers fought back and prevented them from targeting what was supposed to be the White House. It was a very sad day where we lost 3,000 Americans. But at the same time, that event brought us stronger together, saying we will not take crap from these terrorists. And to this day, on that day, 21 years ago, we still always remember, we will never forget. We will never forget the ones that we lost. We will never forget the firemen and the policemen that put their lives on the line to help those people. And for those that we lost, we thank you and we honor you for your service. And we just are grateful. And this event, this time in our history of our country, 9/11, it brings us closer together to show that we can stand up against those terrorists and they will not mess with us whatsoever. But I honor those that we have lost, but they will never, ever be forgotten. So now, one more race left in the round of 16. Next weekend at the world's fastest half mile in Bristol. It's Bristol, baby, as Dale Jr. says. It's going to be a fun event. We'll see what happens. Can Kyle Busch, with a big announcement coming tomorrow, can he capitalize and get a win next weekend? Can Kevin Harvick get a win in a must-win situation next weekend? Or will somebody else above the cutoff that's feeling pretty good about themselves pull off a win? Or heck, are we going to have another non-playoff driver win next weekend, like a Martin Sherex Jr., for example, or maybe an Eric Almirola who runs pretty well here? We're going to find out. All I know is chaos is about to erupt at Thunder Valley. So you have a wonderful weekend. Subscribe, like. Once again, congratulations to Bubba Wallace and the whole 2311 racing team on their impressive win at Kansas yesterday. Have a great week, everybody, and let's go racing!